Chapter 112. First time at the Hawkwolf Guard. On a mountain peak to the north of the city, an iron hawk forged from black iron unfurled its wings that spanned over 30 meters. It stood on a stone platform that stood several meters tall, overlooking the entire Jiaping city. It had no intentions of hiding at all, as if it was announcing arrogantly that the Hawkwolf Guard was responsible for monitoring and protecting the city. Whether you were a person of the Jianghu or a Qi practitioner, you all had to be careful under the gaze of the hawk. Li Qingshan disembarked from the ship and said nothing more. He directly made his way towards the mountain peak. Below the Iron Hawk was a cluster of buildings, which was where the Hawkwolf Guard resided. After he left, Diao Fei disembarked just now and followed behind him. His gaze had already become determined once more. No matter how Li Qingshan hid his strength, it was unable to sway his determination to join the Hawkwolf Guard. Li Qingshan followed the neatly arranged stone steps. The two sides of the trees were lush, almost obscuring the sky above. The mountain peak was not particularly tall, only several hundred meters tall. It could not compare to the great mountains of the Boundless Mountains, but when he looked back at Jiaping City at the foot of the mountain, he felt a different sense of spaciousness. At the end of the stone steps was a large, stone gateway. On it were the three bold words, Hawkwolf Guard. Past the gateway was a spacious square. At the center was the huge iron hawk. He did not notice it from afar, but only when he got closer did he feel the might of the iron hawk. In particular, the hawk's eyes basically seemed to be staring at people, like they were alive. The stone platform beneath his feet was engraved with the same bold words, Hawk eyes the world, Wolf watches the 9 provinces. There was obviously no need for further explanation for Hawk eyes the world. It was like a hawk soaring in the sky, gazing down at the land. As for Wolf Watch, it described a certain posture. If regular people were called by their name from behind, they would definitely turn around and look back. They would only turn their heads and not their bodies, which was the posture of Wolf Watch. Those who possessed this posture were often crafty and suspicious. Not only were these words filled with heroism, but they also perfectly described the duties of the Hawkwolf Guard. Although Li Qingshan did not know calligraphy, he could immediately tell that these words originated from the same person as the 3 words, Hawkwolf Guard. They possessed an irreplicable, domineering aura that swallowed up the surroundings and swept through everything. It was even more shocking than the huge iron hawk statue. Before Li Qingshan could take a closer look, a young man in green walked over. You've also come to enlist in the Hawkwolf Guard, right? Li Qingshan did not sense any sign of kung fu or qi training from him. Presumably he was just a waiter or a receptionist. However, he naturally had an aura of command. As expected of a 7th-ranked official in front of the Prime Minister's door. Exactly, Li Qingshan said. The green-clothed attendant looked at Li Qingshan in puzzlement. Seeing Li Qingshan's calm expression, he said indifferently, "Follow me." He led Li Qingshan to a large hall. Go in. Everyone's inside. When you go in, record your name and cultivation first. As soon as Li Qingshan stepped into the hall, many gazes immediately landed on him. Every single gaze was as sharp as a blade. Li Qingshan saw over 20 people standing in the hall. There were men and women, young and old. Some stood in groups of 3 or 5, while others meditated alone. Every single one of them was a Qi practitioner. They looked at Li Qingshan, and most of their gazes were hostile. Some raised their eyebrows and mocked him, discussing happily with their companions, while some showed disdain and immediately looked away. There were also 1 or 2 people who were rather doubtful. This was the first time Li Qingshan had seen so many Qi practitioners. He felt rather indescribably excited. He had finally come into contact with the cultivators of this world. Although Xianxia had actually already brought him into contact with them viciously, all of these people were as powerful as monsters. All he felt was admiration and despair. The difference was too great, so it did not feel real at all. Only when he looked at these people now did he truly see them as equals, or even look down on them. Li Qingshan saw several dozen wooden plaques hanging on the walls of the hall, with names written on them. After a glance, he arrived before a long table in the corner of the hall. An envoy in black leaned against the table and wrote on it. he said without even raising his head. Name, origins, master, cultivation. Remember, you can't hide anything or they'll find out. The envoy did not continue, but the threat was self-explanatory. Only then did Li Qingshan understand why these people had remained here. They wanted to learn more about their new opponents. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to take out his Black Wolf tablet and see the Black Hawk commander, Zhuo Zhibua, so that he could directly join the Hawkwolf Guard. However, he just happened to not see a single proper Hawkwolf Guard. There were only a few envoys in black attending to him, so he gave up on that thought for now. He just happened to want to observe properly. He would see the person in question sooner or later anyway. He refused to believe that Zhuo Zhibua would remain hidden for such a major event. Li Qingshan, first layer Qi practitioner. Li Qingshan said. As soon as Li Qingshan mentioned his cultivation, he heard a few snickers. Applying for the Hawkwolf Guard as a first-layer Qi practitioner? This kid's lost his mind. Go home and drink milk. This isn't where you should be. Is he really a first-layer Qi practitioner? I don't think so. Don't tell me he's lying. You're not far from death if you falsely report your cultivation. The people in the hall were all second-layer Qi practitioners at the very least. If they possessed innate talent as a Qi practitioner, most of them would cultivate diligently and only emerge after breaking through to the second layer. If they practiced inner force and reached the innate realm, they would use the true Qi behind them converted from inner force to forcefully break through to the second layer. As a result, there were very few first-layer Qi practitioners who roamed the world. Even the green-robed emissary who was recording also raised his head. Really? Those who aren't Qi practitioners can't sign up. Although he was not a Qi practitioner, he had spent most of his time in the Hawkwolf Guard, so his insight was quite good. He could tell that Li Qingshan did not seem like a Qi practitioner at all. Li Qingshan suddenly understood one of his flaws. After experiencing the dangers of the boundless mountains, he had used the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression to conceal all of his aura. It had basically become an instinctive action. Even after refining true Qi, it was still the same. Obviously, he had to firmly suppress his demon Qi. He could not allow even a sliver of it to leak out, but there was no need for him to be so cautious with true Qi. If he revealed his identity as a Qi practitioner at a suitable time, it should save him quite a lot of trouble. As a result, his aura changed. His true Qi was no longer suppressed, so it was naturally released, displaying the strength of a first-layer Qi practitioner. However, it only led to a roar of laughter. Even the doubtful gazes finally looked away, no longer taking Li Qingshan seriously. The unknown was terrifying, which was why a donkey could scare away a tiger. However, when a donkey used up all three of its moves, that was when it would be at its wit's end. The envoy put down his brush and smiled as well. I can tell you're young, so it's not easy for you to possess such talent. Why don't you go home and cultivate for a few more years? You can only go out after you break through to the second layer. The competition this time will be dangerous. Li Qingshan ignored the mockery. He expressed his gratitude towards the kind reminder before saying confidently, I'm confident. The envoy did not comment on that. He continued to record. No clan, no sect, no master. This was Li Qingshan's background. Before long, the envoy finished recording and raised his head. The competition will begin in 3 days. You can leave. Someone will arrange a place for you to stay. You can stay here if you want. Another attendant picked up a wooden sign and hung it at the end of the high wall, hanging it together with the names of the others. Of course, there wasn't any complicated information on it. There was only the name on the front and the cultivation level on the back. This made Li Qingshan sigh. To a Qi practitioner, background and master were all fake. Strength was the only calling card, something that people valued. When he turned around, he looked at the crowd of Qi practitioners as if he was looking at trash. He shook his head and especially said to those who were laughing at him loudly, trash. Arrogance was his nature, and ridiculing others was his talent. Who are you talking about? A Qi practitioner said angrily. He was the one who told Li Qingshan to go home and drink milk. I'll talk to whoever answers. Li Qingshan said. Those who did not speak ill of Li Qingshan naturally did not think that Li Qingshan was scolding them. The Qi practitioner flashed in front of Li Qingshan and suddenly raised his hand, gathering his true Qi. The envoy who was recording said, "Private fights on the mountain. Kill without mercy." The Qi practitioner's hand trembled a little, but he still lowered it in the end. The rules of the Hawkwolf Guard were no joke. In the very beginning, when the Hawkwolf Guard recruited new people, they did not care about food or lodging. All they had to do was come on the day of the competition. Afterwards, many people were unable to come. The Qi practitioners lived in Jiaping City. In order to eliminate their opponents, they would basically stop at nothing. Poisoning, ambushing, and assassinating would often end before they even began. As a result, the rules were changed. All the people who came to be recruited would stay on the mountain, and they were forbidden from attacking one another in any way. If they did, they would be killed without mercy. Li Qingshan said, "Come bite me, you idiot." How did the saying go? Your brother's low profile doesn't give you the right to show off. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was his principle in life. You can curse, but I'm not stupid either. The Qi practitioner laughed out of anger. In 3 days, you'll understand what it means to be reckless. A few other Qi practitioners sneered as well. At this moment, Diao Fei walked into the hall. He glanced at Li Qingshan before looking at the wall. He let out a sigh of relief. As it seemed, Li Qingshan's cultivation was indeed at the first layer. He had just used some sort of method to hide his cultivation, which gave him quite a fright. However, the method Li Qingshan had used to kill Qian Rongming remained a mystery to him. He dared not be careless. When the other people in the hall saw Diao Fei, they immediately stopped paying attention to Li Qingshan. A third-layer Qi practitioner would be a powerful opponent in the competition this time. They needed to observe him properly. Compared to him, Li Qingshan was just a clown. He was close to death, so there was no need to pay attention to him. Li Qingshan didn't stay in the hall any longer. As soon as he exited the hall, another attendant led him up the mountain. He walked past the lush greenery and fragrant flowers. With the care of a master gardener, the scenery changed every 3 steps. It was too beautiful to behold. When they arrived at a house, the green-robed messenger pointed at a room and said, "This is your residence. You already know that no private fights are allowed on the mountain. You can eat 3 meals a day in the hall. If you need anything, you can call us. As long as it's not too much, we'll try our best to satisfy you." Although their attitude was very ordinary, their service was absolutely thorough. Chapter 113. Pearl Dew Pills. Li Qingshan entered his room and ingested the remaining Qi-gathering pills as well. However, the innate method of practicing Qi became more difficult the further he progressed. After ingesting the 2 pills, he felt like his growth was no longer very obvious. Of course, this was also due to the pillaging and refinement of the demon core and Sumeru ring. The sacred hall, however, little did he know that after he left, Qian Rongji had arrived in the hall as well. When she saw Diao Fei, she lowered her head and hid the hatred in her eyes. Afterwards, she recorded her name as well. She thought Diao Fei had killed Qian Rongming. Only a stronger Qi practitioner could kill a Qi practitioner, but she did not question him. Diao Fei felt wronged, but he did not explain himself. If he did, it would seem like he was afraid of her. At noon, Li Qingshan arrived at the back of the hall. It was almost full already. The exquisite table made of pear blossom would shone brightly, giving off a faint fragrance of flowers. All of the windows were open, and outside the windows was a picturesque view of a garden. It was extremely tranquil and elegant. Delicacies were served up one by one, filling the long table for anyone to choose. It was like a buffet in his past life, except the quality of the food was extremely good. It was on par with the legendary Manchu Han Imperial Feast. After leaving Qingyang City, Li Qingshan had tasted the cooking of many so-called great chefs, but compared to the chefs of the Hawkwolf Guard, it was basically the work of an apprentice. Many dishes made from precious ingredients filled the long table. Li Qingshan gained an even greater understanding of why so many Qi practitioners wanted to join the Hawkwolf Guard. Let alone everything else, just the food was enough to give them the luxury of an emperor. He ate happily, which led to quite a few eye rolls. Many Qi practitioners came from sects and clans, so they obviously would not be as inexperienced as him. Even though Li Qingshan had already controlled his appetite to make himself seem like a human, a group of people still secretly looked down on him as a starving ghost. Li Qingshan currently ate a dish made from some unknown fish. There was a flash before him, and Diao Fei sat down in front of him. He took a moment to organize his words. "Your concealment technique is very impressive. I couldn't tell in the beginning." Perhaps because he believed no one was bold enough to disobey the rules set down by the Hawkwolf Guard, he seemed much more relaxed now. He did not put up much of a guard or vigilance. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "It's probably because I'm too weak." The corner of Diao Fei's mouth twitched. To be able to silently kill a Qi practitioner at the second level and turn him into a horrifying skeleton, was this really weak? He suspected that Li Qingshan cultivated a demonic cultivation technique, which was why he didn't want to show it to others. It was a pity that Qian Rongming really treated Li Qingshan as a pushover and lost his life. 7 Li Qingshan said, "From the looks of it, this isn't your first time here, right?" Diao Fei said, "Good eyesight. This is my second time." Then there was silence. Li Qingshan said, "Right, do you have Qi gathering pills?" Diao Fei said, "Of course there is." But the Qi condensing pill was the most common external pellet used by Qi practitioners. Of course, it was very precious, but it was also very common. Li Qingshan wiped his mouth and pushed aside the cutlery in front of him. "Can you sell some to me?" Diao Fei said, "If you're talking about silver, then forget it." Sure enough, it was just as Li Qingshan had expected. To Qi practitioners, the gold and silver of the secular world no longer held much meaning. Li Qingshan said, "Of course not silver. It's talismans." What? Diao Fei was shocked. There was no Qi practitioner that did not carry a few talismans with them. In order to participate in this competition, he had made ample preparations. These talismans were a Qi practitioner's trump card, or even a second life. Selling talismans before the battle was like selling the weapons in one's hands before entering the battlefield. It was unbelievable. Li Qingshan fished out all the talismans from his 100 treasures pouch and laid them out on the table. He was very confident in the security of the Hawkwolf Guard. He asked, "How is it?" Immediately, it was not just Diao Fei. The gazes of everyone in the hall were drawn over. Diao Fei's breathing halted slightly. Apart from 2 inferior talismans, the rest were all low-grade. Most importantly, there was even a mid-grade talisman, the Lightning Strike talisman. That was a divine item that could turn the tables in crucial moments. Even a third-layer Qi refining cultivator would be seriously injured if they were not careful, or even killed on the spot. 1 Qi condensing pill for 1. Diao Fei immediately extended his hand towards the talismans. As long as he had these talismans, victory was guaranteed. Li Qingshan accepted all the talismans and smiled. "The price seems a little low. I'll pay 15 Qi condensing pills for all your talismans," a Qi practitioner in green said suddenly. He was young, but his clothes were luxurious. He could tell with a single glance that he came from an aristocratic clan. Li Qingshan laid out his hands at Diao Fei. "Look, someone's raised the price." The reason why he had chosen to carry out the transaction in public was because he did not know the normal price. However, before the Qi practitioner had even finished speaking, another Qi practitioner said, "I'll pay 15 Qi condensing pills for your talisman." Li Qingshan was rather surprised. He looked at the talisman in his hand. Although he knew talismans like that possessed the densest spiritual Qi, he never thought it would be worth so many Qi condensing pills. Many Qi practitioners gathered over, and their eyes all shone brightly. Li Qingshan believed that if it were not for the fact that he was in the Hawkwolf Guard, he would have been surrounded and attacked already. However, right now, no one was even bold enough to speak ill of him. As a matter of fact, 2 of the Qi practitioners who had mocked Li Qingshan just now even approached him shamelessly. The Qi practitioner who had directly clashed with Li Qingshan cursed him under his breath with an ugly expression, "Idiot." However, he became even more vicious inside. "I'd like to see how you die without these talismans." He had no idea what Li Qingshan was planning. Li Qingshan had no plans to take part in the competition at all. He had Wang Puxi's promise, so how could he not make use of it? However, Li Qingshan already had enough trump cards on him. These talismans were nothing at all. Exchanging them for pills and rapidly converting them into his own power was what mattered the most. Li Qingshan stood up and said loudly, "Everyone, please calm down. I'm selling all of these talismans, but they'll go to the highest bidder. We'll exchange pills for talismans, and we'll be fair to everyone. Let's start with this Swift Breeze talisman." He ranked the talismans in his hand according to their spiritual qi, going from weak to strong. He actually began an auction on the spot. The envoys in green all looked over, but none of them interfered. However, they really had never seen anyone selling talismans here before. "I'll pay a qi condensing pill," someone answered immediately. 2. Li Qingshan said, "Is there anyone else who's willing to pay a higher price?" After asking for a while, someone finally made a bid of 3 pills. After that, no one else placed a bid. It seemed that low-grade talismans weren't too important to qi practitioners. Zhang Xian accepted the 3 qi-gathering pills and handed the talisman back to the qi practitioner. Actually, the price of the talisman had already completely exceeded its normal price. Normally, it would be very rare for it to be worth a qi-condensing pill, as everyone understood that compared to these external items, pills that could increase one's strength were the way to go. But at a time like this, the situation was reversed. No matter how many qi-condensing pills they had, they could not increase their strength immediately. However, an additional talisman, even if it was inferior, could immediately increase their strength by a little. It would give them a better chance in the upcoming competition. If they did not buy it themselves, it was very likely for their opponent to obtain it, which would become a tool to defeat or even kill them. Even the lowest grade of inferior talismans could be the straw that broke the camel's back. On one hand, it was the beautiful future that awaited them after joining the Hawkwolf Guard, but on the other hand, it was the tragic sight of defeat and death. They were forced to do everything they could. When Li Qingshan reached the low-grade talismans, the atmosphere gradually heated up. The number of qi-condensing pills began to exceed 5. When Li Qingshan sold all of the talismans and only had mid-grade lightning strike talismans left, he already possessed over 50 qi-condensing pills. He discovered that the qi-condensing pills were not uniform in size. Many of them were only the size of peanuts. A single bottle could hold over a dozen of them. As it turned out, the pills refined were not perfectly round pills, but paste-like substances. Alchemists would then refine them according to the standard. Alchemists with insufficient skill would refine pills with weaker effects. In order to ensure the same effects, the standard for qi-condensing pills had to be slightly larger. There were many qi practitioners who had never bid until Li Qingshan took out the final mid-grade talisman. Only then did their eyes suddenly light up. 10 qi-condensing pills. 20. 25. The price immediately surpassed its previous price. This talisman was a talisman that could truly influence the outcome of a battle. It was also why Qian Rongming was bold enough to challenge third-layer qi practitioners. Whoever obtained this talisman would have an additional 30% chance of victory at the very least. Many qi practitioners were determined to obtain this talisman. Li Qingshan smiled from ear to ear. With these qi-condensing pills, breaking through to the third layer of the innate method of practicing qi would become extremely easy. Suddenly he turned around and saw Qian Rongji standing at the entrance, staring at him resentfully. She obviously knew what talismans Qian Rongming possessed. Li Qingshan sneered slightly. She had failed to bully him, so she came to kill him. Qian Rongming's death was nothing to be regretted. If this woman did not know her place, he would just send her to see Qian Rongming and keep him company in the afterlife. "I'll bid one." Diao Fei, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. At this moment, he was filled with regret. If he had traded with Li Qingshan on the ship, things would not have come to this. Silence fell as everyone looked at Diao Fei. The qi practitioner who had bid the highest said coldly, "You're not joking, are you?" He was also at the third layer of qi practitioner and viewed Diao Fei as a formidable opponent. Diao Fei took out a porcelain bottle with great reluctance. "I'll bid 1 pearl dew pill." "What? Pearl Dew Pill. The Qi practitioners were in an uproar. It seemed that the Pearl Dew Pill was quite famous. Li Qingshan also revealed a curious expression. He did not know that the value of a Pearl Dew Pill was so much higher than a mid-grade lightning strike talisman. Qi condensing pills were definitely not top-notch medicinal pellets. It was only because the herbs used were relatively easy to collect, the refinement process was relatively easy, and the medicinal properties were relatively stable. These characteristics made it popular and a necessity for most Qi practitioners who pursued quality at a low price. Chapter 114. Boundless Cloud Mountain. Daofei had planned to keep it for when he broke through to the fourth layer of Qi practitioner by opening his yang linking meridian. However, he couldn't let this lightning strike talisman fall into the hands of his opponent, so he could only reluctantly give it up. Sacred Hall. Li Qingshan said to Daofei, "Let me see." Daofei poured the Pearl Dew Pill into his palm. The small, transparent pill that looked like a dewdrop shone brightly. The surrounding Qi practitioners could not hide the greed in their eyes. A good pill could be used to break through at a crucial moment. It was not something that Qi gathering pills could compare to. Li Qingshan suddenly felt very regretful. Why did he not finish off both of them on the ship? Demon thoughts, oh demon thoughts. He smiled and said, "Not bad." Not bad? Daofei was very unhappy with this evaluation. This was the Pearl Dew Pill. Have you ever seen such a good pill? The other Qi practitioners also thought that Li Qingshan was putting on an act. However, not only had Li Qingshan seen it, but he had also eaten a lot of it. Only now did he realize how good Xianxia had been to him. Although he did not know the names of the pills Xianxia had given him, any one of them was much better than the Pearl Dew Pill that the other Qi practitioners coveted. Sigh, I wonder how that guy is now? Chew. Tens of thousands of miles away, a black civet lay in a deep blue embrace and sneezed. A jade-like hand gently stroked her fur that was as smooth as flowing moonlight. A gentle voice said nervously, "Did you catch a cold?" At the same time, she tightened her arms and hugged Xianxia tightly. "I'm a cat demon. Can a cat demon feel meow? Use your brain, master." Xianxia struggled with all her might, but she could not break free. "That's good. Your body is too weak. Eat a pill." A slender finger picked up a pill and brought it to Xuanyue's mouth. It shone brightly like a crystal. Compared to it, Qi gathering pills were like mud pellets, and Pearl Dew pills were like rocks. Sacred Ho? No, no, no. Xianxia shook her head left and right, struggling even more. Fine, fine, fine. I won't eat it. Her voice was filled with helplessness and pampering, like a mother looking at her most beloved child. It was as if even being willful was a wonderful virtue. Xianxia raised her head and looked at the beautiful face that seemed to be filled with sorrow even though it was smiling. She suddenly felt sad. Even though she had escaped and been captured, she had not scolded her at all. Instead, she had taken care of her with even more care, illuminating her like moonlight. Using an endless supply of spiritual herbs, she had allowed her to transform from a small spiritual cat into a demon general that could take human form in just a few decades. In her heart, she suddenly thought of that tall figure. In the endless wind and snow, he carried her on his back to climb that ice cliff, and shed 2 sparkling tears for her. I'm not a good pet, right? It was just like when a child had their own child, they would suddenly understand the feelings of their parents. After giving it their all, they would finally understand how difficult it was for them to get what they wanted. Master, let me tell you a story. All right, I love listening to Xuanyue's stories. Outside the window was a vast expanse of cloudy mountains. 2 strange beasts pulled a carriage as they traveled through the air. By the time they returned to Jiaping City, Li Qingshan had already returned to his room. He lay leisurely on his bed, calculating his gains for the day. More than 50 Qi gathering pills were enough to support his cultivation for 3 days and break through to the 3rd layer of the innate method of practicing Qi. As for the Pearl Dew Pill, it could be used to break through to the 4th layer of the innate method of practicing Qi, which was the 1st and 2nd layer of the innate method of practicing Qi. Thus, Li Qingshan shut his room door tightly and began to cultivate in seclusion again. His actions were quite common. Many practitioners would use these 3 days to sharpen their weapons and shut themselves in their rooms. More than 50 qi-gathering pills of various sizes were swallowed one by one. Most of them were converted into demon energy, while the other half was converted into pure true energy. Although he could not reveal his true form and see for himself, Li Qingshan believed that his demon incarnation would definitely become even taller and more majestic. If he lived in seclusion in the mountains, even if he breathed in and out the spiritual qi of heaven and earth day and night, it would still be very difficult to reach this speed. The cultivation speed of demons was indeed far inferior to that of humans. This could be considered a natural shortcoming, but Li Qingshan was trying his best to use human methods to make up for this shortcoming. Although external pills were helpful to cultivation, they would also accumulate impurities in one's true energy, making it impure. Apart from refining the medicinal properties, ordinary practitioners would also have to think of ways to refine their true energy. Naturally, this would take up a lot more time. However, with the assistance of the Sumeru ring, Li Qingshan could save himself from this process. Unknowingly, Hu knew how much time had been saved, and it had instead sped up his cultivation. Li Qingshan meditated quietly in his room. 3 days passed by in the blink of an eye. He had ingested the equivalent of a year's worth of qi-gathering pills for many qi practitioners in a single sitting, and only then did he break through to the 3rd layer of the innate method of practicing qi. Originally, he wanted to continue cultivating, but the time for the competition was up, so all he could do was stand up and leave. He discovered that it had begun to drizzle before he knew it. Under the guidance of an attendant in green, he arrived at the venue for the competition. It was a square made of limestone, and the rules were extremely simple. Qi practitioners would go up one by one and fight it out. The victors would advance, while the losers would retreat. In the end, only 3 people remained. They were the Hawkwolf guards. At the end of the square was a vermilion building with overhanging eaves. It had become rather dull from the rain, and many figures could be vaguely seen on the building. The pitch-black black wolf uniform was a color that Li Qingshan was familiar with. Li Qingshan had been here for 3 days before finally seeing the person in question. Apart from the Hawkwolf guards, there were a few people in casual clothes as well. They leaned against the railings and conversed with one another in an extremely relaxed manner. There were fruits and pastries beside them, as if they were watching a show, or in other words, a gamble. That was because Li Qingshan could clearly hear them discussing the strength of the qi practitioners and how much they had bet. They were so relaxed that it seemed like they were discussing a horse race or a dog fight. A black wolf guard with a rosaceous nose held a list in his hand. The names and cultivations of the various qi practitioners were written on it. There's no lack of 3rd-layer qi practitioners among the top 3. The only thing worth betting on is who among the 2nd-layer qi practitioners can emerge victorious. The black wolf guard beside him leaned against a pillar and said indifferently, "I'm betting on that woman." Bulbous Nose looked at the list. Qian Rongji? He's not particularly powerful. It's a feeling, the black wolf guard said with a smile. He was very secretive, but he looked into the building. Bulbous Nose seemed to suddenly understand something, and he also smiled in tacit understanding. The Hawkwolf guard suddenly said, "Oi, look at that kid. He's looking at us, the 1st-layer qi practitioner. Why don't we bet on when he'll die?" "Then I'll bet on the 1st round." 2 men sat opposite each other in the building. They could clearly see through the curtains and the surroundings. There was a pot of tea on the table, giving off a pleasant fragrance. 2 beautiful female attendants stood beside them. One of the men was slightly plump and wore a black hawk uniform. He was the Black Hawk commander of Jiaping City, Zhuozhibwa. His eyes narrowed into slits as he smiled. "Sir Zhou, let's have a little bet as well. What do you think?" Although he still seemed middle-aged, his actual age was in his 60s at the very least. However, because he had opened the 4 major meridians of yin and yang as a qi practitioner, broken through the girdle meridian, and condensed a sea of qi, he seemed much younger. Sir Zhou, on the other hand, seemed even younger. He did not seem to be in his 30s yet. He was dressed like a scholar, with a few strands of beard that added to his solemnity. He seemed like a refined scholar. He waved his hand with a smile. I'm not betting. I'm just asking for trouble if I'm betting in your territory. However, he did not laugh at all inside. This bastard had come to show off his strength to me again. How despicable. In Jiaping City, the only person who could stand on equal footing with Zhuo Zhibua was obviously the district magistrate of Jiaping, Zhou Wenbin. There had never been a place where two people of equal authority could get intimate with each other. However, the two of them were both fearful of one another, so they maintained peace on the surface and did not invade one another. They would show off their strength to the other whenever they had the opportunity. Under Zhuo Zhibua's repeated requests, Zhou Wenbin finally picked up the register. Afterwards, he saw a name, and his heart skipped a beat. Commander Zhuo, there's a first-layer Qi practitioner among the applicants this time? There are people who don't know what's good for them every year. Zhuo Zhibua had noticed this anomaly a long time ago, but he did not take it to heart. The difference was just too great. Although Wang Puxi had reprimanded him because of Feng Zhang, telling him to report to him, he had never mentioned Li Qingshan's name at all. Perhaps even Wang Puxi believed it was impossible for Li Qingshan to escape from Feng Zhang with his puny skills, and that was something that happened a few months ago. Zhou Wenbin hid his smile. He did not have Zhuo Zhibua's influence in Jiaping, but as someone who came from Clear River City and had attended the 100 schools of thought, he was much more well-connected and well-informed. His memory was quite impressive too. He could vaguely remember that a friend of his in Clear River City had once mentioned an interesting matter to him in a letter. It mentioned a name, and it seemed to be surnamed Li. The White Hawk commander, Gu Yening, was the woman with the most authority and power in the Rui Commandery. She was the dream lover of all men. As long as they saw her, there was not a single person who could remain unmoved. Although they could only drool over her and could not approach her, everything related to her was a topic that people took great interest in. She was like a superstar from Li Qingshan's past life. And his old friend, Zhuo Zhibua, had even been reprimanded by old Wang of the Clear River Prefecture because of this. As a result, this interesting matter was even more worth reminiscing about. I'll bet 10 spiritual stones. I'll bet that this kid definitely has something to rely on since he's bold enough to enlist as a first-layer Qi practitioner. He'll be able to rise up suddenly and become a Hawkwolf guard. Zhuo Zhibua's eyes narrowed. He smiled. And I thought you weren't good at gambling. Aren't you even more addicted to gambling than me? A group of people at the top would gamble with the lives of those below them, while a group of people at the bottom would become the tools of gambling for those above them. Humans were no different when it came to gambling with Qi practitioners. Attacking and competing with each other was the instinct of these primitive creatures. It was only expressed in a slightly different way. Li Qingshan stood to the side. The group of Qi practitioners were filled with hostility towards him. Those who managed to buy talismans would not thank him because their chances of success had increased. They would only resent him for using the opportunity to extort them. Those who did not manage to buy talismans would resent him because their opponents had grown stronger. Not to mention the people who mocked him, only to be mocked by him. Chapter 115. Directly passing, the Qi practitioner who had clashed directly with Li Qingshan sneered as he walked past Li Qingshan. He said softly, "I'd like to see how you die. Pray to the heavens that you don't run into me in the end." The sacred hall. Li Qingshan smiled. "I believe I won't run into you." Afterwards, under the gazes of all the Qi practitioners, he passed through the arena and arrived below the building. 2 attendants blocked his way. "What are you trying to do?" Li Qingshan ignored the attendants. He raised his head and said loudly, "May I ask if Commander Zhuo Zhibua is here? What is he trying to do? Is he tired of living?" The Qi practitioners were surprised. The Black Wolf guards upstairs were stunned as well. Brandynose murmured, "Looks like I've guessed wrong. This kid is going to die before he's even entered the arena." "Chase him away." Zhuo Zhibua frowned. Was his name something that just any measly Qi practitioner could refer to? Swish. The 2 Hawkwolf guards outside the corridor casually drew their blades. The other Hawkwolf guards remained in their original positions as if they were just watching on. "I bet he can block 3 strikes at the very least." Brandono's words immediately made his two colleagues become slightly more serious. One of them even said, "Then let's bet on it." Zhou Wenbin suddenly said, "Hold on. Commander Zhou, this is the person I bet on. I won't take responsibility if he dies. Perhaps he's in trouble. Why don't we go take a look?" The smile in his eyes deepened. He stood up and made his way to the corridor. All Zhuo Zhibua could do was follow him. He felt rather uneasy. Zhuo Zhibua looked at Li Qingshan from above. "What are you trying to do?" "It's Commander Wang Puxi. He sent me." With a flash of dark light, Li Qingshan shot towards the building. Zhuo Zhibua extended his hand and grabbed it. It was a Black Wolf tablet. The matters from a few months ago suddenly flashed through his head. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Qingshan. "You're that person?" He had never thought that the kid who had caused Feng Zhang to lose his position and caused him to be scolded by Wang Puxi would actually still be alive. He was actually bold enough to appear before him. Li Qingshan laid out his hands and shrugged. "The real deal." Zhou Wenbin smiled. "Commander Zhou? What's going on?" Zhuo Zhibua's face darkened as he replied, "Official Zhou is a wise and astute man. Why do you ask when you already know the answer?" He had always prided himself on his intelligence, but today Zhou Wenbin had made a fool out of him. His mood was terrible, and when he looked at Li Qingshan, he wanted nothing more than to slap him to death. "Does Commander Wang's words count?" Li Qingshan said, completely ignoring Zhuo Zhibua's anger. When he first saw Zhuo Zhibua, he was relieved. According to his estimation, Zhuo Zhibua was only at the level of a monster that had just formed its Yao Dan, which was completely within his tolerance range. At the 6th layer of Qi refining, Qi practitioners who had opened their sea of Qi were roughly equivalent to demons who had formed their Yao cores. The long period of time that monsters cultivated was not without its benefits. Their physical bodies were strong, and their demonic aura was dense. They were far superior to humans of the same realm, and almost had an overwhelming advantage. Even when humans used spiritual artifacts and talismans as weapons, they could only barely hold their ground. In the end, they relied on their intelligence and numbers to overwhelm demons. Coupled with Little Anne's assistance with the path of white bone and great beauty, Li Qingshan was obviously fearless. Since he knew it was impossible for Zhuo Zhibua to like him, and he was not the type of person who would stoop down to please others, he would just let nature take its course. However, in the eyes of bystanders, he seemed rather arrogant and despotic. In the Clear River Prefecture, no one was bold enough to say that Wang Puxi did not keep his word. At the very least, Zhuo Zhibua was not. His expression changed a few times before returning to normal. He even smiled slightly. He tossed the Black Wolf uniform down the stairs. "Li Qingshan, you're a Hawkwolf guard now. Just wait down there." "Thank you for your promotion, Commander Zhou." Li Qingshan clasped his hands, but he instead became even more vigilant. People who could control their emotions were like venomous snakes hiding in the grass. They were even more terrifying than angry lions and tigers. The Holy Church with that, the spectating Hawkwolf guards could not help but be taken aback. The Qi practitioners who had come to take part in the recruitment were thrown into an uproar. Just like that, they had lost another spot. The clown who was supposed to be dead in their eyes had actually directly passed through in such a manner. The Qi practitioners immediately felt it was unfair. "That's unfair. Why can't he take part in the competition?" The Qi practitioner who had clashed directly with Li Qingshan and wanted to kill Li Qingshan cried out. "He's only a first-layer Qi practitioner. Even someone like that can join the Hawkwolf Guard?" Diao Fei and Qian Rongji stared at Li Qingshan from afar. They were no less surprised and shocked than the people around them. They said nothing. How could a group of measly Qi practitioners change the Black Hawk commander's decision? They wondered just how powerful of a backer they had to be to directly force Zhuo Zhibua to accept him. Wang Puxi? Who was that? Wang Puxi's nickname of Old Wang had spread far too far, such that some people had forgotten about his actual name. However, the two of them were both well-informed and quick-witted people, so they immediately realized who it was. Was it the legendary Old Wang of the Scarlet Hawk Commander? No way. That was a figure who overlooked all the Qi practitioners of the Clear River Prefecture, one of the 3 rulers of a territory spanning 1,500 kilometers. However, apart from that person, who else could force Zhuozhibua to yield without even showing up? They looked at Li Qingshan again and only felt that this seemingly ordinary 16-year-old young man was even more unfathomable. If the person standing behind him really was that person, then he was someone they could not afford to provoke. Diao Fei thought about how he managed to establish a connection with someone like that. If that was the case, then killing Qian Rongming without batting an eyelid seemed to be a matter of course. Zhou Wenbin looked at the noisy scene with a smile and said to Zhuozhibua, "I was just joking with you earlier. I've said before that the thing I hate the most in my life is gambling, so there's no need for Commander Zhuo to mind. But I've never gone back on my word. Are you looking down on my gambling character, Sir Zhou?" Zhuozhibua smiled sinisterly and casually picked up a walnut from the fruit platter on the table. Li Qingshan suddenly felt a terrifying killing intent. There were no more than 3 people present who could see this clearly. Li Qingshan happened to be one of them. The walnut pierced through the rain like it could pierce rocks and clouds, shattering countless droplets of rain and creating a hole in the air. It struck the forehead of a second-layer Qi practitioner. Bang! The walnut shattered, and his skull shattered. The Qi practitioner still maintained his furious expression as his head was smashed into the ground by the tremendous force. His neck bones snapped, and he collapsed on the ground in a twisted posture. All the Qi practitioners shut their mouths as if someone had grabbed them by the throat at the same time. Every single one of them stood above everyone else in their respective hometowns, prodigies of the heavens. They held the lives of people of the Jianghu in their hands, let alone ordinary people. Now, a Qi practitioner as noble as them had his life taken away so easily. It was as easy as slaughtering a chicken or a dog. It was very likely for any one of them to die earlier. This person was just unlucky, which was why he had been randomly chosen to serve as a warning to others. They looked at the culprit, Zhuozhibua, who stood on the tall building. His rather chubby figure seemed to immediately grow taller. Suddenly, they understood something. This was Jiaping City, the place with the most and strongest Qi practitioners within a radius of several hundred kilometers, and they were currently standing in the territory of the Hawkwolf Guard, the place with the most and strongest Qi practitioners. Let alone say anything, even their dissatisfaction vanished. Li Qingshan exhaled. This was reality. There was a huge gap between each layer of Qi refining. If a Qi practitioner at the second layer of Qi refining wanted to defeat a Qi practitioner at the third layer of Qi refining, he might be able to win by relying on numbers and a powerful talisman. However, against a fourth layer Qi practitioner, they could only pray to the heavens that they could escape. Against a fifth layer Qi practitioner, they would be dead for sure. The difference between the sixth layer and the fifth layer was even greater than the difference between the previous layers combined. It was just like how demonic beasts that had not condensed their demon cores could never defeat demons that had condensed their demon cores. For a sixth-layer Qi practitioner who had split open a sea of Qi, killing a measly second-layer Qi practitioner would be as easy as eating or drinking. Let alone fleeing, they would not even have the time to react. Normally, Zhuozhibua would not have dealt with this so violently. After all, every single Qi practitioner possessed great influence in their own region. They were either from clans or sects, so he did not want to make enemies for no good reason. However, he was furious right now, so he could not care about that. If he killed a measly Qi practitioner, then so be it. Who would still be bold enough to seek revenge from him? Zhuozhibua glanced past Li Qingshan indifferently. Li Qingshan could sense that Zhuozhibua wanted to throw the walnut at him even more, but he only smiled back. Zhuozhibua's frown deepened. Regular people would tremble in fear when they saw undefeatable power. If that person still held hostility towards you, it would lead to tremendous mental pressure. If this continued, it could even drive a person mad. However, he did not see any fear from Li Qingshan at all. Instead, he was extremely composed and at ease. Either Li Qingshan was an idiot and did not know fear, or he was fearless. The answer was clearly the latter. Zhuozhibua obviously did not believe that Li Qingshan was fearless because of his strength. That was because of his background. However, Wang Puxi did not explain his relationship with Li Qingshan at all. He only mentioned it casually, and he seemed very cold. He could not help but look at Zhou Wenbin. This bastard had many connections in the prefectural city, so he definitely knew something. Zhou Wenbin cleared his throat. Commander Zhua, I heard that the White Hawk of the Rui Commandery has seen this kid before. He even invited him to a cup of alcohol and gave him the mental map of the Green Province that Sheriff Wang carries with him. Really? Zhua Zhibwa shivered inside. A name rang out in his head, as well as the white figure that he had only caught a glimpse of, but he was determined to never forget. He was rather well informed. He knew that Commander Gu had once appeared in the small city on the border. He understood even better that Feng Zhang had run into trouble, making old Wang lose face before Commander Gu, which was why he was directly dismissed. Chapter 116. Aspiration to Greatness. Zhibwa's gaze towards Li Qingshan became cautious. He frowned deeply. Li Qingshan's casual attitude of the Templar seemed to confirm this guess. At this moment, the corpse of the dead Qi practitioner had already been carried away. The order of the competition had already been rearranged. A black wolf guard personally stepped forward to preside over it. Although the Qi practitioners felt envy, jealousy, and hatred towards Li Qingshan, none of them dared to say anything. From today onwards, this guy was a Hawkwolf guard. He was not an existence they could casually provoke. The Black Wolf guards on the second floor all had their own thoughts. They looked at Li Qingshan with gazes of either disdain or curiosity. In any group, arrogant newcomers were not welcomed. Not to mention the fact that Li Qingshan had basically replaced their old colleague, Feng Zhang, yet he was only a first-layer Qi practitioner, which made him look down on him even more. Many people wondered how they could teach this ignorant kid from the mountains a lesson. Li Qingshan just stood below like that, gazing at the square. His attitude was even more relaxed than the Hawkwolf guards who set up the bet. He completely ignored all the gazes on him. He discovered that being able to stand outside and watch people fight was indeed better than being used as a gambling tool in the square. Two Qi practitioners arrived at the center of the square, standing 10 steps away from each other. The one on the left wore green casual clothes. He was in his 20s. His face was pale and beardless, and his hands were empty. He did not carry any weapons. Li Qingshan remembered that he had once bought 2 talismans from him. One was an inferior talisman, while the other was a low-grade talisman. Clearly, he was quite wealthy, probably from an aristocratic clan. He was born with the talent to practice Qi. The one on the right was much older, in his 30s or 40s at the very least. He wore tight, gray robes, and there was an extremely eye-catching red scar on his face. He gave off a fierce aura, and a treasured sword hung from his waist. If he had guessed correctly, he should have been a fighter, converting his inner force into true Qi. Both of them were second-layer Qi practitioners. Li Qingshan was unable to determine who was stronger in such a short amount of time. The Qi practitioner in green definitely possessed a few powerful talismans, which gave him an advantage in terms of wealth. However, he definitely lacked actual battle experience. 7. Even if there were, it was mostly the strong bullying the weak. On the other hand, that gray-clothed Qi practitioner had fought his way up from the wilderness of the rivers and lakes with real weapons, so his combat experience must be extremely rich. Moreover, Yen Song had said that among low-level Qi practitioners with martial arts backgrounds were usually stronger. In the light rain, the two of them faced each other. Dang! The gong sounded, and the first battle began. The gray-robed Qi practitioner moved. His body turned into a streak of gray light as he pounced towards the green-robed Qi practitioner. He casually pulled out the sword from his waist. His movements were smooth and natural. One moment he was still 10 steps away. In the next moment, the cold, sharp sword was already stabbing towards the green-robed Qi practitioner's throat. Li Qingshan also cheered in his heart, as expected of a martial artist. Unflustered, the green-robed Qi warrior spread his arms and retreated like a gliding bird. At the same time, he circulated his true energy and shot out a fist-sized fireball. Spell. Li Qingshan immediately focused. He had long since learned from Yensong that true qi was not simply an enhanced version of inner force. Apart from increasing one's speed and strength, it could also be used to cast many magical spells. Those talismans, in essence, were spells sealed in talismans that could be activated and used at any time. The rainwater was vaporized by the high temperature emitted by the fireball. Even the wet ground became dry, giving off white steam. It could be seen how powerful the fireball was. If a body of flesh and blood collided with it, it would most likely be set ablaze. The gray-clothed qi practitioner also seemed to be extremely fearful, but he did not panic. Using a mysterious footwork, his body swayed left and right, and he actually avoided the fireball by a hair's breadth. Although his hair and eyebrows were burnt beyond recognition, his speed did not slow down much. Sacred Hall, the green-robed qi practitioner panicked. Clearly, he had underestimated the desperation of qi practitioners who were born as martial artists. He wanted to force back the gray-clothed qi practitioner, but his plan to pull away had failed. He had yet to recover his true qi, so he could not use another technique in time. He gritted his teeth and slapped a talisman on himself. A gentle breeze rose up beneath his feet, and he immediately sped up. Li Qingshan understood that while techniques were powerful, they could not be used quickly. It would have been fine against qi practitioners like him, as their reactions were limited. However, against qi practitioners who were born as martial artists, he would struggle a little. The green-robed qi practitioner pulled away and shot out fireballs from his hand. Large swathes of white mist rose up. Suddenly, a fireball flew towards Li Qingshan. Just when he wanted to dodge, a wind blade swept through the air and cut the fireball into two. Waves of heat surged over, causing Li Qingshan's clothes to ruffle. Li Qingshan raised his head. A black wolf guard had sheathed his blade. When he saw Li Qingshan look over, he snorted coldly in disdain. In the midst of the steam, the gray-robed qi practitioner was in a sorry state. His body was covered with scorch marks, but none of them were fatal. He was both fierce and cautious, chasing after the green-robed qi practitioner without letting go. Instead, the green-robed qi practitioner became flustered because of his depleted true qi. Inferior-grade talismans could only last for an extremely limited amount of time. The gentle breeze beneath his feet gradually dispersed, and he took out another low-grade talisman in a hurry. Li Qingshan shook his head slightly. The outcome had already been determined. He should have used his strength to overwhelm his opponent in the very first moment. Being indecisive like this would not work. However, he could understand that there would be fewer talismans with each use. The more talismans he used at the start, the smaller his chances of victory would be. In the end, it was very likely that he would end up with nothing and waste a valuable talisman. A vicious light flashed through the gray-robed qi practitioner's eyes. Before he knew it, he had already formed a talisman in his left hand. The talisman shattered and suddenly turned into a swath of white light. It was so dazzling that no one could open their eyes. The spectating qi practitioners all looked over. However, Li Qingshan could clearly see that the talisman was only an inferior-grade talisman. Apart from being dazzling, it did not possess any offensive power at all. However, the green-robed qi practitioner became flustered. Due to fear, his body stiffened up slightly. In a battle between experts, there was only a single line. There was a flash of light, and with it was the flash of a sword. The green-robed qi practitioner let out meaningless gurgles. A metal sword that shone with light had pierced his throat. His eyes were filled with regret. He still had a few talismans he had not used. If he had used them right from the start, he would definitely have won. 2 streaks of tears flowed from the corner of his eyes, drowned by regret and death. The green-robed qi practitioner announced loudly, "Lu Yiming is victorious." He did not even mention the green-robed qi practitioner's name. Either he amazed everyone with a single move, or he died a nameless death. Abundant battle experience and decisiveness became the key to victory. Li Qingshan also gained a deeper understanding that whether it be talismans or techniques, it all depended on the person to use them. Even if a sheep had the claws and teeth of a wolf, it would still be a sheep. Unfortunately, Lu Yiming failed to amaze everyone with a single move. He encountered a third-layer Qi practitioner in his second battle. Fortunately, he saw the opportunity in time and forfeited early, which was why he did not lose his life for nothing. Under the gloomy sky, the rain drizzled down slowly. The matches continued one after another. Not every single match would result in death. If they were not the opponent's opponent, they could forfeit. The other side could not force them into a corner. This was part of the Hawkwolf Guard's efforts to reduce the number of casualties. However, whether it be spiritual artifacts or techniques used by Qi practitioners, they were just too powerful. Basically, every single one of them was strong on the offensive but weak on the defensive. Most of the time, it was impossible for them to forfeit. Once they were struck, only death awaited them. Victory and defeat were separated by a thin line. The second round of matches ended. There were already 4 corpses on the side. The noble Qi practitioners just lay in the muddy water lifelessly. Li Qingshan suddenly felt very foolish. They had already obtained everything that ordinary people could never obtain in their entire lives, yet they risked their lives to fight for even more, only to lose their lives as a result. However, he suddenly thought about it. Wasn't he the same as well? Surely he could not say that he had great dreams and others had foolish ambitions. He could not help but shake his head in a self-deprecating manner. However, he had no plans to change his mind at all. The so-called contentment was just a way for the weak to console themselves. It was the creed of life for those who had lost their drive to live and the spirit to forge ahead. A man's ambitions were everywhere. His ambitions had yet to be fulfilled, so what was there to talk about contentment? Only constant struggle and forging ahead was the source of happiness. Even if he died in defeat, he would not have lived in vain. The pretentious thoughts in his head vanished. When he looked at the battlefield again, there was no longer any mockery or self-deprecation in his eyes. Instead, there was admiration. He admired the Qi practitioners mobilizing all of their wits and strength to fight it out with their opponents, seeking victory in the face of danger and seeking survival in the shadow of death. The exuberance of life they gave off made death seem insignificant. Battle intent and fighting spirit flowed through his body. Zhuozhibua had been paying attention to Li Qingshan the entire time. He could clearly sense Li Qingshan's great fighting spirit. He saw how he was almost admiring the matches. This was very unusual. Due to his anger, the Black Wolf guards upstairs were afraid to make a ruckus and jeer like before. However, they still looked down on him like they were watching a battle between beasts, even though they had also emerged from the arena. Only Li Qingshan was admiring the battle and thirsting for slaughter. Zhou Wenbin was also observing Li Qingshan. This teenager, man, possessed a bearing that was completely different from ordinary people. Although he usually kept it hidden and seemed ordinary, it would erupt and reveal itself as soon as an opportunity presented itself. However, no matter how special he was, it would all be useless if his cultivation and strength were insufficient. A first-layer Qi practitioner in his teens was quite talented in Jiaping City, but in the context of the entire Clear River Prefecture, it was very mediocre. He would probably remain as a Black Wolf guard for the rest of his life. He would be lucky if he could even split open a sea of Qi. Zhou Wenbin glanced at Zhuozhibua and shook his head. And under this person's command, it would probably be very difficult for even this wish to come true. Chapter 117. Slaughter of Qi practitioners in this competition. The strongest were undoubtedly Diao Fei and the other third-layer Qi practitioner, but the one who attracted the most attention was Qian Rongji. Although there were many female Qi practitioners, and there were quite a few among the Qi practitioners who had come to participate in this competition, it was still rare to see a natural beauty like her. Beautiful women would attract attention no matter where they went. Sacred Hall, however, Li Qingshan had taken up one of the 3 spots. The final 2 spots belonged to the 2 third-layer Qi practitioners without a doubt. As long as they did not run into each other, the other Qi practitioners basically had no chance at all. The competition progressed very quickly. Many of the battles were decided in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. In less than 4 hours it was the 4th round. Just as the 2 third-layer Qi practitioners were about to win against the 2 second-layer Qi practitioners, the situation suddenly changed. The green-robed messenger read out the names, but it was 2 second-layer Qi practitioners against 2 second-layer Qi practitioners, and 3-layer Qi practitioners against 3-layer Qi practitioners. The expressions of Diao Fei and the 3rd-layer Qi practitioner changed slightly, but the 2 second-layer Qi practitioners suddenly exploded with hope. One of them was Qian Rongji. Her attitude was calm, as if she had already expected this. When Qian Rongji walked into the field, Li Qingshan lowered his eyes. The outcome had been decided. Since Qian Rongji had a mid-grade talisman as a trump card, whether it was cultivation or status, Qian Rongji was slightly above her. How could she not have one? As expected, the moment Qian Rongji entered the field, she immediately held a talisman in her hand. However, contrary to Li Qingshan's expectations, she did not immediately activate it. Instead, she said gently to the Qi practitioner in front of her, "Young Master Zhang, you should be able to see that this mid-grade talisman of mine is extremely powerful. However, I don't want to use it to harm others. Please admit defeat." Young Master Zhang could not help but hesitate. He had indeed seen Qian Rongji's strength. Coupled with this middle-grade spiritual talisman, he did not even have a 30% chance of winning. Qian Rongji used her advantage as a woman to the fullest. The rain drenched her clothes, outlining her beautiful figure. Her eyes were misty like the rain. She did not seem like she was threatening him, but basically pleading. "Unless I have no other choice, I really don't want to become enemies with you. If there is a day when you come to Ancient Wind City as a guest, Rongji will definitely receive you well." Upstairs, Zhou Wenbin smiled and said, "Commander Zhou, will this work too?" Zhou Zhibua said, "Why not? The competition isn't just a test of cultivation, it's also a test of wisdom." Li Qingshan could not help but admire this woman's cunning. As expected, the Qi practitioner referred to as Young Master Zhang chose to forfeit under the beauty's soft pleading and the threat of the talisman. Qian Rongji also passed through the square and arrived below the building. She stood beside Li Qingshan and even smiled sweetly at Li Qingshan. "I've underestimated young master before. If I've offended you, please do not take offense." Vaguely, she displayed her impressive figure, as if Li Qingshan was not the murderer related to Qian Rongming's death, but a young man of outstanding talent who had moved her heart. This was the first time Li Qingshan had heard someone refer to him as young master, but he only felt a chill. He gave an undetectable "yep" before ignoring her. Regardless of whether she really did not care about Qian Rongming's death or if she was suppressing the hatred in her heart, she was still a terrifying beauty with a venomous heart. This kind of cold heart probably came from the education of a large clan. No matter how beautiful a woman like this was, she would not be able to move his heart. Not only did Qian Rongji not care about Li Qingshan's coldness, she also continuously tried to find a topic of conversation. "Who do you think will win?" Li Qingshan frowned. He completely focused on the battlefield. The clash between the 2 third-layer Qi practitioners would be the highlight of the competition this time, but it was not as intense as he had imagined it to be. It was not an anxious confrontation. After a few probing attempts, Diao Fei activated the lightning strike talisman he had bought from Li Qingshan. In the blazing white light, a bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky, easily breaking through the protective true Qi and turning his opponent into charcoal. The traces of the lightning only disappeared from his face after a long time. The power was so great that even Li Qingshan was shocked. Lightning was heaven's punishment. Even he would be injured if he transformed into his demon form. Sacred Qian Rongji's eyes flashed. "Young Master Diao, you came at a good time. All spells were about the right time in the right place. Today, the dark thunder rumbled in the clouds. In this summer's stormy weather, the lightning strike talisman was almost as effective as a high-grade talisman. It was not something low-level Qi practitioners could resist, so it became an absolute trump card." Diao Fei also walked to Li Qingshan's side. Although he tried his best to remain calm, he could not hide the ecstasy on his face. He even thanked Li Qingshan in a low voice, as if he did not care about the Pearl Dew pill anymore. The 2 mid-grade talismans became the key to victory. The 3 of them became the final victors. It could be said that they continued their previous relationship on the boat. However, the relationship between the three of them could not be considered friends. Zhuozhibua said from upstairs, "Come up. I don't accept this." Suddenly, someone howled. His face was twisted from jealousy. He became rather mad from the shock of defeat. He stared at Li Qingshan in hatred. "You're just a piece of trash. You're just a first-layer Qi practitioner. How can you surpass me?" Zhuozhibua did not take action. Instead, he said to Li Qingshan, "You're already a Hawkwolf Guard. If someone provokes you, they provoke the Hawkwolf Guard. You know what to do, right?" As if he had not realized the difference between a first layer and a second layer, the other Hawkwolf Guards all seemed like they were watching a show. They were waiting for Li Qingshan to be defeated, and they would like to see if he still had the face to stand here. Li Qingshan turned around naturally and walked towards the Qi practitioner. From the match earlier, he had learnt that the Qi practitioner's name was Lu Hui. He was the one who had provoked him right from the beginning, only to be called trash by him instead. He said, "Since you want to die so much, I'll give you what you want." In the ears of others, it was arrogant. "What do you want? You're just a first-layer Qi practitioner." Lu Hui looked at Li Qingshan, who walked over slowly. For some reason, he actually felt deep fear. His mind cleared up a lot, and he regretted what he had said just now. When he was still 20 steps away, Li Qingshan stopped. He leaned forward and bent his knees, like a vicious tiger lurking in the forest, ready to pounce on its prey. After a momentary suppression, his strength erupted violently, and he leapt into the air. Li Qingshan's gaze was calm and composed, like a young beast king that had leapt out of the forest gracefully. There was no violence or fury, only calmness and composure from confidence. It was chilling. Lu Hui looked at the pair of emotionless eyes and felt an almost suffocating pressure. When Li Qingshan stopped, he had circulated all the true qi in his body. However, when Li Qingshan moved from extreme stillness to extreme movement, all he saw was a blur gliding past him. The speed of the blur was so fast that it created an illusion. It was as if a gust of wind blew in his face after a long time, bringing with it a cold drizzle that hit his face. The figure in front of him disappeared, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He lowered his head, and where his chest should have been was empty. Turning his head with difficulty, he saw that Li Qingshan was holding a bloody heart in his hand. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, he fell face up to the ground. The entire square fell silent for a moment, and the sound of the rains suddenly became clear. Everyone revealed expressions of shock. Even Zhuozhibua and Zhou Wenbin revealed expressions of shock as they exclaimed in unison, "A body refiner!" A second-layer Qi practitioner had been killed in a single strike, and it was not a sneak attack or a talisman. It was a direct confrontation. Everyone felt a deep chill. The Qi practitioners looked at Li Qingshan like they were looking at a monster. Was he really just a first-layer Qi practitioner? The Qi practitioners no longer grumbled about Li Qingshan not participating. Instead, they felt extremely fortunate. If he were to participate, there would probably be a few more corpses lying on the side of the square. Perhaps they would be among them. Sure enough, no one was an idiot. Those who were bold enough to sell talismans before the battle had absolute confidence in their own strength. It was a pity that they were still mocking him. Fortunately, they were not like that idiot who actually leapt out to oppose him. Even the Black Wolf Guards who had always been dismissive of the upcoming battles stared at Li Qingshan in shock. Originally, they felt great disdain towards this kid who had openly entered through the back door and relied on his connections, but now, their opinion of him had completely changed. This kid was definitely not someone they could teach a lesson to casually. The shock that Li Qingshan had given everyone surpassed the shock that Zhuozhibua had received from killing the Qi practitioner just now. One of them had used his strength against a weaker opponent, so it made perfect sense for him to kill his opponent instantly, while the other had used his strength against a stronger opponent and defeated him easily. This was just far too unusual. Li Qingshan abandoned his heart and calmed his breathing. Just now, he had instantly erupted with his physical strength and true qi. Even he was rather surprised by the results. However, when he lunged out, he possessed absolute confidence. The tiger demon leaps over the ravine and the tiger demon digs out the heart. After he had become a demon, these moves seemed to have fused with his blood, becoming a part of his instincts. Back then, when he did not even have a shred of true qi, he was able to defeat Feng Zhang in a single stroke with his physical strength and an opening. During that time, he cultivated every single day. With the nourishment of several dozen qi-gathering pills, the demon qi he converted into made his body even more powerful. Furthermore, his spiritual qi had almost reached the peak of the first layer of qi practitioner, and it was extremely pure. His strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. However, Lu Hui was the exact opposite. He had just gone through 3 battles, so his true qi and physical strength were at their weakest. The outcome was extremely clear between one being stronger and the other being weaker. Li Qingshan gained a new evaluation of his strength. In his human form, killing a 3rd-layer qi practitioner in a direct confrontation should not be a problem. However, he had never seen a 4th-layer qi practitioner before, so it was rather difficult to say. Of course, this was all under the premise that his opponent did not possess any particularly powerful trump cards. However, when it came to trump cards, just how many people could surpass him? Li Qingshan returned to Qian Rongji and Diao Fei's side. They could not help but take a slight step back. The terrifying power that Li Qingshan had erupted with pressured them greatly. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.